shiny toys. Super fun, but super hard to light. Let's break it down. Ha ha! Hey folks, Dave here. I have this new Deadpool Iron Man figure here, and I like him a lot. He is a great figure. He's poses well. He looks good. This is kind of one of those fantasy figures that doesn't really kind of exist in the movies or in the comics that I'm aware of. He's kind of a riff, like what if other characters had an Iron Man suit? And this is Deadpool's Iron Man suit. And I really like him. I don't want to shoot him up. And I had him set up over here to get those shots. The issue is that he's super, super shiny. And sometimes that can cause a lot of issues. Lighting with toys can be very tricky because toys are small and a lot of lights are big. So it's very hard to get the kind of those focus lights, especially if you're trying to match a setting like I am, where I have Deadpool in front of a background that is a TV screen. Matching all that up with these big lights, you got light spill everywhere, you got hot spots where you don't want them. Sometimes it's just not a problem. Everything works out fine. You add your lights, it's perfect. Mwah. However, sometimes it's a hellish nightmare. Skip the hellish nightmares. So what this video is just one tip of what I do in those situations where I can't get the lighting working in the way that I want it to. And the basic premise of this is instead of lighting the figure all at once, just light parts of the figure and take multiple shots of just parts of the figure lit up properly and then combine them in post. So let me show you what I mean. So what I have here is Deadpool sitting in front of this screen here, and I'm trying to light him up. The issue I have is that whenever you take a light, like this LimCube panel here, and light it up, and shine it on him, the light spills basically everywhere. The other problem is that some of the armor is lit up really nicely, but there are significant hot spots in the camera that just make this less awesome than you'd hope. I played around this for a while. No matter what I do, I can't get the perfect amount of lights. I have a couple lights try to set up, plus this overhead light, and it's just not all working for me at all. So I have a tip for what I do with this, and that is light very specific parts of Deadpool in multiple frames, and then combine them in post. So what I do for that is shine the light on so it looks like it's in a good spot. For example, the leg, in my opinion, is a little dark in the beginning there. Right on the one that's sticking out. So if I just introduce just a little bit of light, I have the leg looking okay, but the bicep has a hot spot in it. But then I can reposition the light to highlight the bicep. That works, but the leg has a bunch of light. So between those two, I have a well-lit arm, I have a well-lit leg. And if I do that through the whole figure, then I can get ultimately all the light that I want and then combine it in post. So I'm going to go capture the light for this guy. So I'm at my workstation, so let's jump into Photoshop. Actually, first, let's jump into Lightroom. I have these selected images here. I always start with a fairly basic black image. So what I'm going to do is right-click, go to Edit In, open as layers in Photoshop, and bring it into there. Okay, so once they're all layered, we have all these layers here in Photoshop. As you can see, they're all there that I selected. The black one here is on the top. So typically what I do is make the blackest one, the darkest one. I make that go to the bottom. That way we can use that to build on top of. And you also notice that they're not necessarily all aligned. So I'm going to highlight everything, go to Edit, Auto Align Layers, and click on Auto. And that is going to just align all the images so everything is nice and together and lined up. Otherwise, we're going to do a lot of masking here. And if it's not lined up, it ain't gonna work. So we just make sure they're all lined up. So we have that now. Now that we have everything in a stack here, the next thing to do is to change the blend modes of everything but the bottom one to light. And this is going to end up looking really bad. But, so if I go from normal, I'm going to change the blend mode to light. And what that does is add the lightest part of this image to the one below it. And I'm just going to keep on going down, keep on going down, and keep on going down further and make them all light. So this looks horrible, but what we have here is every single light that I took in these frames. And then I'm just going to turn them all off. So now we're back to our base image. And then we just consider this one at a time. We just start at the top image or the bottom image if you want, just depending on which way you work. I'm going to start at the top and just grab the bits of light that we want and then mask it in. So to do that, I will turn on this top layer here. If you notice along his arm, it gets lit up, and on the side of his head there, I like that, and along his top of his thigh. I don't necessarily like it on the sword. I think it's a bit too bright on the sword, but we can just bring in the parts that we want. I also like a little bit of this in here, kind of in the middle of his body there, a little bit more light that's brought in. So what I'm going to do is add a black mask by hitting the Option key and then the mask key, boop. And then that hides that layer. And then what we're going to do is paint in the layers that we want. I'm going to take a soft white brush with a fairly low opacity, something like 30, and then just brush in the bits that we want. And we wanted that. We wanted the side of his head. And if we do it at a low opacity, we can bring in just the light as we want it. We don't have to bring it in all 100% light, because this is 100% light, and that's a little bit too bright for some of the things. I don't want his head that bright necessarily. So I can just bring in a little bit of what I want, lighten them up like that. So I'm getting the parts of the light that I want, which are these parts over here, but I am not getting the other bits. Like I'm not overblowing the background. The sword is not becoming overblown. I'm not getting the overblown bits on his arm there. So I'm just bringing in the parts that I want. Now, the next one is the back of him. So I'm going to do the same thing. Add a black mask, and then with the white brush, just bring in the bits that I want. Just like that. And part of the side of his head. Grab his sword. This is just quick and dirty. You might want to be a little bit more careful with your brushes. And just bring it in what you want. And if it's a little too much, for example, his head's a little too bright for me, just switch to a black brush and then just brush it away. And there you go. That is basically how you can do it. So we go from a shot that's basically dark, or a shot that has all the lights on that looks horrible, and we can finesse it to get a shot that actually looks fairly decent. And then we can go now for the rest of this to finish off the rest of this photo, but that is something that can be dealt with outside of this video. But the point I wanted to make is by taking multiple frames with all the lights and then just grab the bits you need, combine it into one photo, then you have the character lit the way you want, and the rest is just simple photography, post-production stuff. So that's pretty much what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you a little bit about the final image that I created using a few different frames, so they look slightly different, but you get the same idea. So if you like this, please hit subscribe, and I will see you next time. Cheers.